Technology partners are the unsung growth heroes. This is Partner-Led Growth, a show dedicated to empowering partners to discover the solutions their clients need while growing their ability to take their own revenue to the next level. Your host, Ben Spector, a passionate member of the MSP community for over a decade, will help you navigate the growing partner ecosystem. Partner-Led Growth is sponsored by Zomentum, the revenue platform transforming the partner sales ecosystem, one solution, one vendor, one partner at a time.
Hello and welcome to Partner-Led Growth, the podcast. I'm your host, Ben Spector. Today's guest is a proven leader and innovator in the SaaS world, a prominent proponent of productivity, a sensei of synergy. He's the Senior Business Development Manager at Augment. It's George Smith. George, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, Ben. Great to be here.
Let's get the conversation started straight away. First question from me. We're well aware that technology partners are increasingly responsible for the hundreds of SaaS applications that their clients are using. What are the biggest challenges they're likely to encounter while doing this?
Yeah, it's a great opening question to sort of open the can of worms that we can discuss here today. I think probably the thing that I'd pick out from that question is, are MSPs and IT consultants, are folks aware that they are, in at least their customers' point of view, responsible for the SaaS applications that they're using? And I'm not sure that a lot of IT professionals are. We know that SaaS and cloud applications, they're so easy to sign up for. You and I are using dozens a day, and for a lot of people in small to medium businesses, they look to their managed service providers to say, yep, you're my IT expert, so I'm signing up for Zoom, I'm using QuickBooks, I'm using Dropbox, I'm using this, and you guys are just taking care of that. Whereas for the MSP, they know, well, actually, I have a pretty comprehensive master services agreement that outlines exactly what I do for you. And yes, we've standardized you on Microsoft 365, and maybe I look after your Slack too, but that's really it. And so what we're seeing is a kind of growing, what I like to call assumption gap, where customers are assuming that their MSPs are taking care of SaaS services, but from what we're seeing, MSPs aren't quite really there yet or delivering it, let alone being paid for it.
It's not often that within the first couple of minutes, I get the inspiration for the title of the show, but I think it's going to have to be the SaaS assumption gap, because I think that's one of the key threads here. I think what you've said really validates in my mind the whole reason for doing this show, which is that MSPs over the years have worked their way up a maturity stack in some senses, from starting off doing the networking and the servers, and then adding the desktops, and then the support, and then rolling a bit of security into it. And then they kind of started touching on productivity, and they'd go ahead and standardize on Microsoft 365 or Google Workspace, call that productivity, and then go home for the weekend. But the reality is, above that kind of Microsoft 365, Google Workspace productivity layer, in inverted commas, is this exponentially larger stack of SaaS solutions that represent both a problem and an opportunity, I think. And the reason I started doing this podcast is to help those MSPs and technology partners think about the problems their clients are facing, think about the SaaS applications that, as you say, they are going to go out and buy anyway. And by thinking about the applications and the productivity issues and the technical solutions to them, actually, there should be a whole load of revenue opportunities in there as well. If we can encourage these technology partners to become more comfortable with managing SaaS applications that maybe they've never even heard of before, then I think that's a really exciting thing. And I think the best MSPs are the ones that over the next few years really grapple with that problem. And as you say, closing the assumption gap. Client thinks they're going to manage it. MSP's never even heard of it. How do we bring those two pieces together?
Exactly. And, if we kind of fast forward to a darker scenario where there's something like a breach. Maybe it's not until there's that conflict or that negative conversation that assumption gap becomes exposed. The client might be using a risky application, an unsanctioned application. That's the origin of a particular breach. They come to their technology partner or MSP and say, I thought you were looking after this. They say, nope, here's our MSA, and things really blow up. And regardless of what happens from a legal sense there, your reputation, other customers are going to hear about it, and it kind of can just get very ugly very quickly. So what we're advocating for at Augment is that, SaaS services is a big part of the future for technology partners. Things have come a long way from actually moving into managed services like they did in the early 2000s. And let's give credit where credit's due, Ben. I think technology partners have done a great job of securing and managing the network with tools like RMM, etc., firewalls, antivirus. But the problem is with COVID, it's dramatically accelerated the rate at which people are working from home. It's here to stay. It's the new normal, all those other cliches. And so, the workers aren't in the castle anymore, which was secure, which was the network. They're out in the fields. And so technology partners really need to adopt and enhance their tool set to be able to cater for this new normal. And that's really what we're trying to deliver at Augment is a dedicated tool specifically built for technology providers and MSPs to help them manage that SaaS problem and deal with things like shadow IT as well.
So, we've talked about quite a lot of problems, and I love asking these questions around, what is the biggest problem facing? Because you get such different answers. But almost universally, the problem of shadow IT and managing this plethora of SaaS applications, it is one of the biggest problems. I was reading in a study, I think it was by Gartner a few months ago, that your typical business of 1,000 employees. Now, I get that that's larger than probably most of the clients that our audience are working with, but your average business of 1,000 employees has 280 different SaaS applications being used by those employees. Just take a minute to grapple with that number. It's insane. And it got me thinking, I work at Zementum and product, and how many SaaS applications are we using? Within my team alone, I think there's probably about 20 or 30. And then the engineering team, where I had a colleague sharing some design mock-ups with me the other day in a tool that I'd never heard of, and almost every day I think you mentioned it, I stumble across tools that I didn't even know were in the organization. And that's me working in the organization in a position where actually I do generally know most of what's going on. And I still stumble across applications in my own organization that I had no idea were here. So how can we expect the MSPs to discover what those solutions are, and then once they've discovered them, kind of manage them? Because I think, like you said, the clients expect the MSP to take control, but how can they if they don't know? Well, what's the solution?
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right, Ben. Shadow IT is a massive problem, and as you say, there's just so many applications out there, and people aren't signing up these applications because they're trying to be malicious. They simply want to be better at their job, whether it's a salesperson using Zoom to include videos in their outreach, whether, like you say, it's marketing or content developers that want SaaS applications. People just want to do their job better. And to your point, traditional tools, if there's maybe an unsanctioned application, let's pick on Dropbox for an example. Love Dropbox, but we'll just use them as an example. Consumer great file sharing application that maybe a corporate structure doesn't want to use. So they identify it, they block it. George loved using Dropbox, now I can't access it. What do? I just find the next tool that I can access, whether it's a Box or a G Drive, something else. And that is the core problem with shadow IT. So to answer your question, the solution is MSPs have to have a way whereby one, they can get a full inventory of all the cloud applications being used across their entire IT estate, that they can also drill into their individual tenants so that they can provide that information, that data set to their customers to go to a CEO or a CFO or whatever leader at the customers they serve and say, did you know that Mary is using a Russian file sharing app? Did you know you have 4 applications that do the same thing? last year we standardized you on Microsoft, and you said we want to keep Slack because our employees love Slack. Well, I can now show you that more of your employees are using Microsoft Teams to communicate instead of Slack. So is there a case here that you still need to be paying for Slack and those licenses? And we know that at senior level, a lot of those decisions need to be informed by data. And if you don't have access to that full set of information, it becomes very, very difficult to make those decisions. And in addition to that, from a security perspective, if you can't see and have visibility into all the different SaaS that people are using, it becomes very, very difficult to adopt a good security policy. I reference the Cheshire Cat from Alice in Wonderland. He kind of says, if you don't know where you're going, it doesn't really matter what path you take. And it's very true for cloud and SaaS applications. If you don't know the full picture, it doesn't really matter what you do with security, because there'll always be one rogue application or something you don't know that could be the cause for a breach.
So the first thing you mentioned, the inventory. I love the way you pick on Mary and her Russian file sharing example, particularly relevant at the moment, I guess. How are MSPs and technology partners doing this today? How are they getting the inventory today?
Yeah, well, I think traditional IT in terms of like RMM certainly gives you some of that picture. And then, there's other things that you can use, kind of DNS log files. But that's part of the problem, Ben, is that there hasn't really been a new set of tools to help people do that. And that's why we started Augment, to give MSPs that tool set to get that inventory. Now, we know at enterprise level, there's other companies that do this, like Blissfully, Better Cloud, Flexera, but that's enterprise level, and those guys are making hundreds of millions of dollars a quarter. The issue is that it's just not accessible or affordable for technology partners serving the SMB community. And that's where Augment comes in, is that it is a dedicated tool specifically built for MSPs. It is multi-tenant, so that you can easily go in and get that full list of SaaS applications that then is going to inform not only your security decision making for your clients, but also allow you to open up conversations with your clients around shadow IT. Where is their data being stored? How can they begin to mitigate risk and develop a comprehensive security plan? And then from within that, at Augment, we're also looking to build out, management remediation capabilities. So there's kind of becomes this full suite of products that is purely focused on SaaS and cloud application management and services.
The RMM thing really resonates. I, over the last few years, until about a year and a half ago, I was running an MSP of my own, that I was lucky enough to be able to sell and exit to join Zementum. But the RMM thing, we used to use that to try and inventory SaaS applications to some extent, but it's very limited because you can only inventory the tools that have some kind of local footprint. So Google Drive, OneDrive, Zoom, you can inventory those because there's an executable installed on the computer that the RMM can find. But what the RMM can't find is things that run purely in the web browser, have no desktop shortcuts, no local footprint, as I would describe it. And then what you say about them, those other enterprise tools not being affordable, as I think is quite interesting as well. Because one of the stories we used to try and spin with our clients or our prospects was that our role as an MSP was to try to bring the quality of enterprise IT down to the small business. Mm-hmm. So I think a lot of our audience are probably thinking along the same lines. When they're having conversations with their clients, it is about, if a client employee has previously worked in an enterprise level business, they will be used to a certain level of IT provision. And I think it can be quite scary for people moving from working for a big company to working for a small company when they have a lot of that IT provision taken away. They get a lot of the support taken away, the structure, the rigidity, and they are kind of left to fend for themselves. So I think that in part in smaller businesses, this shadow IT is potentially worse than in enterprises, because in enterprise, they have the controls, they have the tools in place to, lock shit down. Mm-hmm. In small businesses, quite often those controls just don't exist.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, it's an incredibly exciting time, I think, to be, an IT partner or an MSP, because the world is so digital now. And if we, rewind back to early 2000s, where, at the time there was this big migration from a break fix to a managed service model. I think I truly believe that we're seeing that again. IT is cyclical in terms of now we're seeing a shift from a lot of end users have a much higher IT IQ than they did, 10,
which
20
is
years
terrifying.
ago, which is exactly part of the problem, right? In terms of, oh, I'll sign up to this, I'll sign up to that, I'll use my same corporate email and password for everything because it's easy for me to remember. Okay, I've used that for 2 weeks now. I'm done with it, but now that's just going to sit there, in the ether, available for anybody who wants to try and access it. And that's what hackers are doing, right? Where the reason why we're seeing such an increase in breaches is hackers aren't just going after the big businesses anymore. They'll take what they can get, and it's that shotgun approach of just kind of spray and see what hits. And it's the smaller guys that are suffering because of actions like that. Oh, I'll try and get credentials for this, I don't know, irregular application. Oh, it turns out that it's actually the same credentials for their Microsoft account. Now I'm into to the Microsoft portal for a small business and can run riot within there. And the sad truth is that for smaller businesses that do suffer a breach, that can often spell the end of that business, because whether it's through reputation or just financial ruin, they can often go out of business. And that's pretty scary for MSPs too. I don't think it's a secret that that's the number one concern of what's keeping them up at night, is their clients suffering a breach. But that's why I think we need to have clarity in what it is MSPs are actually doing. I think it is moving from not just the managed, but into risk. And we can talk about MFA and other kind of evolving standard security best practices, but we speak to partners that are firing their clients if they don't have 100% MFA enabled and active. And I don't think MSPs need to shy away from that. Every business needs IT. We're running in this global digital kind of planet now. It's really exciting, but I think there's just a big opportunity for MSPs to really adopt SaaS services and be the go-to experts for auditing, monitoring, securing, managing, and administering cloud applications. Now, that doesn't mean to say you need to be an expert in the hundreds of thousands that are available. You can still use that traditional IT model and say, this is the stack that I focus on in terms of cloud applications. I focus on Microsoft, and we've got a list of a dozen others that you can run your business on. This is what we will help you manage and secure. If you partner with me, this is what we can guarantee you. We're also going to monitor to make sure that Mary isn't signing up for, poor Mary, but Mary isn't signing up for random things. And we're going to identify those to you as well, so that you can take the necessary actions to, whether it's reprimanding your employees or just educating them and being like, guys, this is our stack. This is what we use. If we need to adjust our productivity processes or the tools we're using, we can have that conversation. But that needs to also be led by their IT providers in some way, I think, as well.
That thing about we need to have that conversation, I think that's a really good point to talk about. We've spent the first 20 minutes or whatever it is of this show talking about this from quite a negative perspective. How do we block things? How do we lock things down? How do we stop the users doing what they want to go out and do? How do we prevent shadow IT? Let's flip that around. How do we empower the users? And I think a lot of the problem there is that MSPs traditionally have their conversations with the business owner, with the CEO, with that top figure, who probably doesn't really know what the needs of their teams are. Does the CEO really need does the CEO really know what the marketing leader needs to do their job, what the sales leader needs to do their job, what the HR leader needs to do their job? So I think we all need to stop having the conversation only with the business owner and being contracted to do our IT services based on what the business owner thinks they need, and start to have more of a conversation with the functional leaders themselves. So, my question to you, how do the functional leaders get heard in that conversation? How do the functional leaders communicate their needs and ensure that their needs are being met, so that they don't have to go out Googling their own solutions, and so that Mary doesn't have to go and sign up for her Russian file sharing?
It's a fantastic question, and I think that as time goes on, we will see the same in any business. It'll be the same for cloud applications, emerging dominant players that fix a certain problem. So I think general awareness and education is important for anybody who regularly uses a computer to understand the tools that they use. But I think it comes back to that data set, right? You're exactly right. CEO might say, we're using Salesforce. It's the best tool that we have. I love it. We're all on Salesforce. But if in 4 to 6 months' time, the director of sales or whatever functional leader, that kind of really manages that team that's using Salesforce a lot is able to go forward and say, you know what, we don't have a lot of our staff that actually enjoy using Salesforce. We much prefer a HubSpot or something similar. I can actually show you concrete data that shows that. Here's a list of all the SaaS applications we use. We can get granular information on the usage in terms of who's using it, how often. And as you can see, our team much prefers this tool or whatever it might be over Salesforce. So from a cost perspective as well, there's an option to reduce license counts as well as save money. And that's a tricky conversation to have. And I'm sure from your days as an MSP in general, it's no easy thing that you can't keep flicking between tools. But people are always looking for improvements in process and efficiencies in their work. And the bottom line is that workers are going to find the tools that they like and that help them best. And instead of trying, like you say, to fight that and block everything, through monitoring, you can embrace it and then help direct that sort of positive energy of looking for the solution and then getting everyone singing on the same page instead of people just avoiding IT all the time and going rogue.
So we've talked about RMM and a couple of other things around auditing the applications. And maybe either through ignorance or arrogance, a lot of our audience might think they already have a solution to the auditing problem. What is Augment doing that actually really solves that problem? Can you give us quite a technical breakdown of what the Augment stack helps to achieve?
Yeah, absolutely. So Augment's broken into three main modules. The first one is Discover, which is what a lot of this conversation is focused on. It's basically getting you that full inventory of SaaS applications that's being used across your entire IT estate. So you can see as an IT partner, here is everything that's happening across my partners. And then because it's multi-tenant, you can drill in and see exactly which company is using what. Specifically, because we use an agent, you can see who is using what, how often, is it the browser version or is it the local desktop version? And I think Augment has one of the largest databases out there in terms of over 22,000 applications that we're able to pull information on. There's more being added every day. So even for really obscure things, you can still get that information. So that's the data set we're talking about. Once you have that, it becomes about securing and managing it. And that's where our other two modules come in. So Engage is incredibly popular with MSPs because as we know, and Ben, you'll probably know better than anyone from your time is money. And we know that a lot of the tickets that come through for different applications in particular, 80 to 90% of them are the same thing. It's I need MFA enabled again. I need my password reset. I've got this person who needs onboarded or offboarded. And so what Engage allows you to do is actually begin to manage and take care of some of those tickets in a zone of least privilege access. So the problem that's solving is that, in today's kind of current climate, MSPs have a bit of a hard choice to make. We'll use Microsoft as an example. Do I give my L1 technician access to the Microsoft environment so that he can do password resets and things of that nature? But I'm worried he might start a massive fire in there and delete the CEO's account by accident. And as anyone who's been in the Microsoft portal, it can be a little bit complicated. It's a bit of a labyrinth in there. The alternative is, well, I'll have my L3 technician do it. He's an expert. He'll have no problems there. But I really don't want to be paying my senior technician the money that I'm paying him to be doing password resets. I want him focused on project work or solving lucrative technical problems. And so what Engage allows people to do is you can now take care of the majority of those tickets through the Augment portal and without giving access to the actual Microsoft portal itself. And we have partners, Ben, that are having HR begin to take on those responsibilities, office administrators able to do password resets. And the beauty of it is that you can do those actions within seconds, but then still bill your hourly rate or whatever your minimum billing is. So it's all about speed and efficiency for MSPs. The third and final module is called Secure, which is purely focused on Office 365. We'll be building it out from there, but we know that Microsoft is the biggest sort of SaaS application or suite of apps, I should say, in use out there. So it makes sense to start there. And I think for a lot of technology partners, they have just been making their kind of small margins on reselling licenses. And with the recent license increase, there's a great opportunity for MSPs to go out and have a sales conversation with their clients to say, Microsoft is increasing the license pricing, so let's review what you're paying for Microsoft as a product. But let's also have a conversation around security and management and what I can do to help you there to make sure that this environment is secure. And that's exactly what Augment Secure does, is it's pulling in a lot of that key information into a multi-tenant system that makes it easy for MSPs to show the risk. So, hey, Mr. Customer, there's a lot of fires in here. There's a lot of stuff that isn't looking too good. I can help you fix this. I can improve your ID score. I can improve your secure score. I can intercept these risky sign-in attempts, but let's get you on this Microsoft security package with myself. And we can get things like MFA enabled. We can enhance your security posture and policies, and I can show you a report on a monthly basis of exactly what I'm doing and exactly what you're paying me for. Or you can not take that and sign the I'm happy to be hacked format. And that's a key conversation to have, right, with clients is, do you want to start paying for security? Yes or no? And if the answer is no, you can fire them as a client. Like, you don't need to be on the hook for people that aren't willing to pay the money they need to be for secure. I think we were kind of chatting a few weeks ago about this, Ben. If we use the mechanic example, if you go to take your car in to get fixed and a mechanic says, this is wrong with your engine, this is wrong here, it's going to cost this much to fix it, and you say no, and then you drive out and go down the road and your car blows up, you can't turn around and blame the mechanic, right?
Yeah, everyone thinks they can with the IT provider.
But everyone blames the IT. What am I paying you for? Everything's broken. What am I paying you for? Everything's working fine. So I think what Augment helps do, particularly with Secure, is give insight into the hard work that MSPs do to secure and lock down the Microsoft environment. And we'll be adding Google and other apps to the future. But for now, it's a great tool, one of our most popular for helping secure the Microsoft environment in a multi-tenant way.
Yeah, a lot of MSPs have been complaining recently about Microsoft's NCE, the new commerce experience changes.
Yes.
Which I think is what you're alluding to with the price increases. But I mean, my personal view, without wanting to get too much into it, my personal view is too bloody right. It's about time Microsoft increased the prices to represent the value of the product they're shipping.
It's been 10 years.
So actually, I think it's kind of outrageous that everyone's up in arms about the fact that they're adding 20-25% to their pricing. They barely moved the price in 10 years. For the product. Look at what Business Premium does today compared to what a similarly priced 365 license did 10 years ago or even 5 years ago. But putting that aside completely, what it has triggered, you're right, is this conversation within the community about, is licensing margin enough? Now, licensing margin has never been enough. Nobody in this MSP community should ever have been selling licenses on their own. But the harsh reality is that probably 80% of MSPs have been selling 365 licenses on their own. And so those margins are getting eroded. The risk is being shifted more to the MSP, things like these 12-month lock-ins where if the client goes bust, there's bugger all the MSP can do about it. They've just got to keep paying the bill. And so I think a lot of MSPs have been trying to shift that risk by pushing their clients towards buying the licensing for 365 directly from Microsoft. Now, again, don't want to get too much into my personal feelings about it. No one should ever be doing that. You should be taking the problem entirely off your client's plate. Part of running a business is accepting financial credit risk. That it's just a fact of life. You shouldn't be changing the way you do business just because the way Microsoft have changed their licensing. Again, another story for another day. But I think it makes services like Augment Secure even more relevant today, because let's say you have pushed your client off towards Microsoft to buy their licensing directly. Where are you going to make your money? Are you going to charge a management fee? Management fees don't go down well. Adding £5 or £10 or dollars or whatever and calling it a management fee doesn't really go down well, because I don't think people think they're getting value out of a management fee. But if you can pivot that conversation to be around the, the management, but also the security and discovery using a solution like Augment, I think that should make it a much easier conversation.
I think, yeah, I think you're absolutely right, Ben. And I think if you're able to actually provide the evidence of what that sort of additional security fee is as well. So here's the things that I've done. Here's what I've blocked. Here's what I've fixed. Here's the proactive steps that I've taken to enhance your security. That's what you're paying me for. I think that alleviates and mitigates some of the negativity that customers kind of emit whenever you, as you say, you talk about a management fee. People kind of scoff at that a little bit, but to say it's a security fee and actually be able to show the steps that you're taking, I think is a much better conversation.
I think that there could be a bit of an opportunity to deliver some high level sales training here as well, since that's kind of where the conversation seems to be going. You must get some kind of objections to the Augment stack. What do those objections look like, and how would you overcome them to the MSP, and therefore how can the MSP overcome them to their clients?
That's a great question, but I think well, first of all, we'll start with the basics. I think it's important to understand truly what SaaS is and what the cloud is. I think it's these are terms that are bandied around so much, and particularly for your clients as well. Like, that's where I would start is, are you familiar with SaaS? And a lot of people, end users, may not be. And so explaining to them what that is so that they understand what a cloud application is, what the cloud is, so they understand how modern IT, like where it's going. I think that's a really important cornerstone just from an educational point of view, because then the conversation can flow from there. You don't want to be in a position as the expert talking about shadow IT and watching your client's eyes glaze over as you lose them with technical terms, right? We've all been there. We want to make things simple to understand. So explaining what SaaS is and then highlighting what shadow IT is, I think is something that a lot of end users can really wrap their head around and understand why that's important. And people will veer to different areas of importance for them. For some people, it is security. For some people, it is the concern about where their data is and what the source of a breach could be. For others, it's purely cost. I think Gartner has a crazy stat that 33% of IT budget is wasted on SaaS because people are just paying for things that are either redundant and unused or are duplicate applications. So kind of helping educate your clients, is a big thing. And then in terms of sales, I don't know what your experience was from your time as an MSP, Ben, but I would say a lot of MSPs today, 2022, are grossly undercharging for their services. And people do have pockets for security and risk. And that is what we're seeing is MSPs are taking on a lot of not just financial risk, but just risk management in general. That's kind of where we're going with all the talk of cybersecurity. And so if you're able to position yourself as an expert and as someone who can, really enhance and lock down environments, help mitigate shadow IT, secure key, SaaS environments like Office 365, you can charge for that. Don't be afraid to raise your prices.
Yeah, and I think I'd emphasize that probably not, none of those points are specific to Augment.
No.
I think all of those points around justifying your services and justifying what you charge are totally valid, regardless of what you're doing. What you say there about grossly undercharging. The one thing I always say to people, if they ask, I get asked a lot, what would you do differently if you started a new MSP? And the response from me is always the same: charge more. I think I've now that I'm in a position where I get to see what everyone is charging their clients, I get to speak to really successful MSPs. I get to speak to some, put it diplomatically, slightly less successful MSPs. And, it's really interesting to see the disparity between what people are charging. And there are some really successful MSPs that are charging a lot more than others. They've got much smaller teams because, so they're charging more, delivering a lot more with a smaller team. So in a way, you're hitting profitability from just about every angle. Continuing on this theme of sales training, because I think it is quite a useful one. I always say there's two types of MSP. There's sales-led MSPs that can't deliver, and there's engineering-led MSPs that can't sell. We've created the Zementum platform to give the engineering-led MSPs that don't know how to sell all the tools that make it impossible not to close more deals. This podcast is kindly sponsored by Zementum. So can you tell me a little bit about perhaps your most memorable sale, especially the kind of language you used, or what really helped you to justify that you were the right solution?
I think when it comes to sales, it's like, first of all, there's obviously two main categories. There's existing clients that you're trying to upsell and cross sell, but then there's also new prospects that you're trying to acquire, and you need to have a slightly different approach for each. We'll start maybe with existing clients, and we talk about raising prices. Again, you need something on to get your client's attention. I don't think it's a successful try to say, by the way, your prices are going up by X amount. Here you go. Here's the new bill. And that's going to upset people. To your point, even about Microsoft, it's been 10 years. The additional functionality available, it makes it hard to argue with why they're doing that. So I think that's one of the big successes that we've had empowering MSPs with Augment is through both Discover, getting that SaaS inventory, and with Secure, doing the risk assessments. It gives you that tool, that information to say, number one, here's how many SaaS applications are you using, Mr. Customer? Okay, and you maybe have to explain what SaaS is. Then it's guesswork. It is just guesswork. They're saying, oh, we use Office, we use this, maybe like 5 or 6. With Discover, you can show them that it's actually 26. You can show them some of the security risks there. You can show them some of the cost savings there, and more importantly, help them save money. Right? I think we had an MSP that was able to save one of their end users £6,000 a year, and obviously, then with that saving, they didn't just put that in the back pocket. They reinvested that into the business for, you guessed it, security services, which they were able to highlight with the secure risk assessment. Going back to the key sale, I think it is using that, is it yes or no? And I would encourage MSPs to try this. It's simply saying, here's all the stuff that's wrong or happening in the environment that we need to fix. Here's the program we would like to enroll you on that's going to help us do that. And it's not a one and done fix. This is something that we can enhance, but we need to monitor and regularly update. It's IT. That's the nature of the business. And if they say no, you can just say, okay, well, that please sign this refusal of service. That is I'm happy to be hacked form, and watch their faces change. Right? Whoa, wait, what are you saying? And it's helping them realize that this is something like security is something they need to invest in, and there is a number of sort of red markers or red flags in their environment, and it's not going to fix themselves, and it is going to cost money. And if they're not willing to pay the money, then they're increasing their risk, or they're going to lose their IT provider, and they can go and find somebody else who wants to take on that risk instead. I think everyone needs IT services. You can afford to fire bad clients, and you can go to your existing good clients to ask for more money, because you can bring that SaaS information and say, here's a whole area of IT you probably weren't even thinking about. And once you explain what shadow IT is, people pick it up very quickly and understand the need to have visibility into that specific area of SaaS.
So there's quite a lot there about the existing clients. Present the proposal for, effectively what you're saying is present the proposal for the increased services and get a yes or a no.
Yeah, and it's something you probably do in Zementum too, right? You can present that proposal, and people have questions. You can go in there and look at it. That's a big part of Zementum, which I love, is going through that process. It makes it very easy for MSPs to do.
What about ghosting? I think it can be very difficult to get a no. And I know when I'm wrapped up in a sales process, being sold to, I do my best not to get involved with doing any selling. I hate selling, but when I'm being sold to, I find it very difficult saying no. It is easier from the prospect or from the customer's perspective to just quietly disappear. How have you got any advice there about how to get that definitive no, so you don't waste your time chasing?
That's a great question. I don't be afraid to be direct, and understand as well that people are so busy. I saw a crazy stat the other day. I think on average people get 147 emails a day. It's a lot of emails. I know I get a lot of emails. You probably do too, Ben. So don't be discouraged by people being unresponsive, and don't be afraid of rejection. But that is something, there is a line that you need to draw in the sand, right? If people are just ghosting, and don't, just don't be afraid to be direct and just say, if this is something you're not interested in, I appreciate a response, and I won't bother you again. And then that might be the response you're looking for, like, yep, we're actually not interested. And then you don't have to, you can better allocate your time to actual warm leads and relevant opportunities. So I'd say don't be afraid to be direct and pick up the phone. The amount of times that I've picked up the phone to call someone and I've thought, this person just isn't interested. They don't want to speak to me. I'm bugging them. And then they pick up the phone and say, "Oh, George, great to hear from you. Yeah, sorry, I haven't responded to any of your emails. I've just been really, really busy, but we are interested." And then that's your opportunity to find some time, book it in the calendar, and actually carve out, a meeting, whether it's, later the week or in the month, to have that sales conversation that you want to have.
Pick up the phone. I think
Either,
those four
yeah,
words is so important. It's
yeah.
I had a tendency to really, I'm not a natural salesperson. I don't, I never enjoyed getting involved with sales processes. So I would naturally shy away from that myself. If I could just send out a quick email, "Hey, just following up on last week's proposal, let me know if you want to discuss." It doesn't help you get to that definitive yes or no. So I think for me, the real takeaway from the sales training bit of the conversation we just had is pick up the phone. If someone's not replying, pick up the phone. If there's any lack of clarity in what they've said, pick up the phone. I think it's much harder for them to wiggle around on the other end of the phone, and it's much easier for you to get a straight answer. George, last question from me. What's exciting you most about the future? And it doesn't have to be technology necessarily.
What's exciting me most about the future, and doesn't have to be about technology? I think the it is. I think we're living in a very exciting time for technology, just across the whole breadth of that massive sector. Whether it's focused on specifically, IT in the business that you and I are in, whether it's medical advancements. It's just a crazy time to be living in. I mean, I think about my time and growing up in the 90s with VHSs and Walkmans and things like that, and how far things have come. And I think that that's something to be aware of, is that, coding's coming into schools now. Like, everything's kind of focused on. Ben's just, for those listening, Ben's just showed me a classic Casio calculator, which we all had to have it at school, right?
But I still use it every day. I have to say, it's very specifically, it's the Casio calculator that has a tax minus and a tax plus button. So it will add or remove tax from whatever number I put into it. If I press tax minus, it will show me the net of tax figure. I just find that much easier than trying to type it into the calculator on the computer. Anyway, sorry, irrelevant.
No, it's fine. I just very excited to see all the crazy advancements. I think the thing that I've heard recently, just to share with folks, that actually excites me the most is some of the virtual stuff around healthcare. So the idea that, I think online physicians is going to be quite interesting, whereby you can have a video call like you and I are having, have your consultation, but the software around it is transcribing the conversation. It's reading people's facial expressions to see if they actually understand what the doctor is saying. Are they worried about the diagnosis? While the patient is talking about, the symptoms, that software system is already going through using AI to try and diagnose a problem. Like, it's just amazing. And for someone who has, older parents and grandparents, to be able to, we've all maybe been there. What did the doctor say, grandma? What? Oh, I don't really sure. I don't remember. To be able to get like a printed conversation transcribed, from a computer source is going to be super helpful. And that's just one example. There's innovations like that happening across the globe. So hugely exciting time to be on this planet for however much longer we're going to be before we start, exploring the stars soon as well. So yeah, very exciting time to be alive indeed.
George, thank you so much for joining me today. I really enjoyed it. If people want to catch up with you afterwards, where can they find you?
They can find me on LinkedIn. I would search George Smith Augment, Augmentt, as if you look up George Smith, you're going to have a hard time. But also feel free, anyone, to email me. It's just first name dot last name at augment with two T's.com. So that's george.smith at augment.com. Be happy to have chats with people, answer any more questions. And that's really why I love my role and what I'm doing is, we're really trying to educate and empower MSPs in the channel. So would love to hear from folks if they want to share their thoughts or want to chat more.
And I think last time we spoke, you also mentioned the content library on the Augment website, Augment with two T's, augment.com /content-library, where there's a whole load of information. It's not selling Augment. It's a lot of stuff about managing SaaS applications and how to position your MSP to be that MSP of the future that everyone is going to need to grapple with over the next couple of years.
100%. That's where we put our on-demand webinars. It's where we put our ebooks. It's all free and accessible for people to go and grab. Again, putting our, not just talking the talk, but walking the walk as well. We want to be available to our partners and to the channel in general for folks to learn more about, where we see this massive opportunity to add SaaS services to your traditional managed services.
George, I've learned a lot today. I've got about 2.5 pages of notes, which is definitely an indicator of a good conversation. So that's it, everyone. Thank you so much for listening. If you've learned something today or enjoyed it, please do share it, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening. If you want to get more from today's show, check out the show notes and share this episode with a friend. Earn, grow, and manage revenue quickly and cost-effectively in the Zomentum Revenue Platform. To learn more, check out zomentum.com. See you in the next episode.